Hey guys, Fastest Pass here. Thanks a lot for tuning in. So excited to show you guys. This is part 3 of our interview with the Pikes Peak team who makes the whole racing event happen. And this is just Megan and her team. This event is about why going from dirt to asphalt. And also, if you're a fan, you're gonna wanna tune in because they give you a lot of fan facts of why they do what they do, where to go on race day, what you're gonna see and what to expect. So super excited about this part of the interview. Stay tuned in, make sure you like us on all our social medias. Fastest Pastor, love you guys. Tune in, video after the intro. Take care. What we do, and so we've talked about the changes. The biggest change probably to note in the last decade is the transition from dirt to asphalt, right? And we talked about how that changes the car divisions and everything else. What about the spectator feedback? I mean, I don't see a lot online about people saying, well, I liked it better when it was dirt or asphalt. And, you know, I think it depends on your preference, right? If you're a dirt racing guy, you're the person who's standing in the stands and you learn that when the sprint cars come by, just turn your head. And then you can finish watching them, you know? And you got the other guys that don't like that and they go to the asphalt racing, right? So they don't get sprayed with dirt and everything else. With the changes in the decade, what are some of those? What are the feedback that you've received from that?
Well, I'm glad you haven't seen a lot of the feedback because we get a lot, and granted, so be it. You know, there are a lot of people and a lot of local people and a lot of racers that still wish it was dirt. But again, we had to go with the changes of the times, with the changes of the city, and the people needed the environment, and the Forest Service needed to be done, and so we just had to work with it.
And it was all, it had nothing to do with us as an organization.
Right.
It was all handled with Pikes Peak America's Mountain and a lawsuit that they had and all of that. It had, there was no one from Pikes Peak International Hill Climb that had anything to do with it. We just run a race on that race course, and so we had
to adapt to it.
We had to adapt
to
it. I think looking over the last decade about the biggest changes, and like I said, I've been here 8 years, so I can kind of see a lot of it, is that it's all been at the same sort of time as it's transitioned from dirt to pavement. But it was probably about 12-ish years ago where the organization was in some serious financial trouble. And it was literally paying like last year's bills from entry fee money for the next year. And it was this close to shutting down. I mean,
Wow.
it wasn't stable. And what happened was El Pomar Foundation, which is the foundation that Spencer Penrose left his legacy to, pretty much came and said, let's help fix this. And so that was a huge part about, and that probably happened about 12 years ago. We worked really closely with Sports Corporation that kind of helped with that transition when we were in some financial troubles. And so when I came on, one of the biggest things that I was told was I just need to be fiscally responsible. Like at that point, we were literally like, don't operate in a deficit, figure out how to keep this race going. So it was challenging for a lot of the times. And so financially now we are stable. It is taking 8 years ago it cost $600,000 to operate. Now it costs $1.4 million. So it's still a struggle. Fundraising is a challenge. I mean, not operating in a deficit when you have $1.4 million in expenses is hard. But we've got great footing. My whole plan is to have enough money in the bank where I call it the rainy day fund, right? If for some reason something happened and we had zero money come in, I want 1 year of operating expenses in the bank, and we're almost there, which is great.
Fantastic.
So that's been really important to us. And then the other major change that's occurred is the spectator areas. It was a free for all, and
we had to deal with it. Megan and myself.
Yeah, it was a free for all. There was actually
So it's like when you say free for all, people went
everywhere.
You can spectate.
Growing up, you drive up the mountain in your Jeep and you pull off the side of the road.
So I'm gonna say it. We've all seen the Pago video where you see the guy running across the road, and you can hear him lift off the gas a little bit, you know. But that's again.
Well,
that very footage right there is when me and Megan said I went in and told Megan, I go, we have two choices. We can either make spectator areas, we have to do something,
Or no
or no
spectators.
spectators at all.
And the other thing, truly, there was an incident with the spectator that was leaning over the side of the road and that was clipped by a vehicle. And we actually were served lawsuit paperwork due to that. And the lawsuit was obviously ended up being dropped.
Right.
Because they didn't have any grounding. But it's scary. I mean, and we can't control what people are doing. We can't control when they're running across the street. So that's when we started the spectator areas. And we definitely got some feedback the first year. Because people were used to a free-for-all and now they're in zones. What's really misunderstood about them, well, not anymore, because I think this is our 5th or 6th years, but
Right.
people think that they're just crammed into like a room like this. Like our start line spectator area is like a mile long.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of room, and I think people are adjusting to that. And honestly, it was just like Randy said, I mean, we had no choice. We, in safety-wise, just for the competitors, B, for the spectators, and C, I don't think we would have continued to get insurance if we didn't
Yeah.
do something. So it was a no-brainer at the time.
Yeah, and that attributes to the cost that Megan's talking about. We figured it up, me and Daniel, when we're doing the fencing, we have like 17 miles of fence we gotta put up.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So
lot.
that's just added more time to working on the mountain before the event that we have to do. Before we had
Didn't have to worry about
Didn't
that.
worry about
300 feet.
fence.
Right.
Yep.
Didn't
Yeah.
have parking, didn't have
Yeah.
to worry about it. Now it's different.
But that's where social media works to our detriment, because they see all the world rally races in Europe where there's no spectator areas, there's people, leaning out there on the outside of corners,
Right.
this far from cars, and so they don't understand why we're having to do that when the rest of the world isn't.
Right, and that's the thing
But
is,
more and more tracks are starting to have to do spectator
Yeah.
Correct.
areas.
and also I think, social media, shame on you, number one. Number two is, look at the death tolls and the injury tolls.
Right.
That is one thing about Pikes Peak from a spectator side, very, very, very low percentage of, or even number of injuries from spectators, right? I mean, it's
I know.
and we'll continue to pray that stays the way. I mean, that's one thing we pray for every day for you guys, is your continued safety and the spectator safety here, and that's part of.
And that's
my
a huge
crucial
part
so.
to thank our fans and to the people behind it and the safety team. And it's a huge part of how it does it. And the drivers, they don't know. They don't know what they're going to see around the next corner, which is like a rally.
Right. Yeah.
But thanks to everybody that helps us with that.
So, yeah, keep it coming. Don't shy away from being a spectator. They are right. There's a lot of spectator areas, and actually there's a pretty good place on the hill. I don't think we want to give that away. But there is a place on the hill where you can see nearly almost half the race, right?
Yeah.
And so...
And it was really neat when it was dirt. You could see the dust.
And you can tell
I will
that-
say, during some of the practice mornings, I get to get up there and watch, and I'm usually not watching the section I'm in. I'm over on the hill with my binoculars, and
Yeah.
There's some
the zones we were given,
Yeah.
working with the Forest Service, and again, we're great partners to work with. They've given us these areas, and we've made the best of these spectator zones.
Now, I have heard this. I talked to a few people via instant messaging that had seen some of our previous videos, and what they told me was there's really not a bad area. And they
Yeah,
said,
that's
a lot of it was just perception, right? But they said, one of them says, I've been to just about every area on the mountain, and they said the cool thing about it is there's something unique everywhere you sit.
Yeah.
And they said there's one area, kind of towards the bottom. He says the awesome thing about it is the adrenaline's so high down there, and the energy from the start line works its way up. But he says there you get to really hear the engines.
Yeah,
And it's along the peak, right? And so it's cool to hear that and see that. But that's something I want to set straight, is you can feel good about wherever you go, and view this race, because you're going to be able to see something that's memorable and that you'll take home with you, I think. And
right.
so-
With the corners, 156 plus corners on the mountain, the different speeds in different areas.
Not a dull moment.
No, and last year during one of the practice days when the unlimited cars and open wheel cars were at the start line, we had an incident, and with my safety team, I jump in, we go take care of the incident, clean up the oil, and I said, let's get the track back to the competitors, let's get it going as quick as we can. I'm gonna pull off here, I don't need to go back to the starting line. And I had never sat there or seen it, and So Judd, one of my safety team, and my son was with me, we cleaned it up. We pulled off at what we, a spectator area called 9 Mile.
Yep.
So I pulled the truck right in behind the fence, and so here comes a car, and I could hear it, and I'm right above Horseshoe, and I go, that's pretty cool. And then they said on the radio that Romaine was getting ready to leave in an electric car. And some of my officials had been saying that they couldn't hear the car, and we have, you know, different noisemakers they have to have. A decimal level we want to hear where other tracks
That
don't
makes
want to
sense,
hear it.
yeah.
But all of a sudden I hear this thing like sounds like a jet engine coming up the track, and I'm going, holy smokes. And when that thing went by, we had the bike rack, the fence set up already. The fence is moving from the air coming off that car.
Isn't that something?
And I could hear that thing for a mile up the road. I could hear it going into Glen Cove. So yeah, the different areas, Glen Cove, you're gonna see a real fast area where they go actually on the wrong side of the road around a building. Halfway Picnic Ground's one of the fastest
That's a cool
straightaways
area,
ever
yeah.
been.
That's one of my favorite.
Devil's Playground, you know, you can see all the way down. Cove Creek, you know, it's.
Cove Creek's tricky.
Would I want to see it there? But I've actually watched some stuff. We've done a lot of filming from there, from commercials and stuff. But the corner, the 5 corners, just you have to execute in that area. Real fast, and then that's right where you go out of the trees up to above tree line. So yeah, it's real unique, this up here.
That is cool.
Well, that was another thing we learned as far as the number of vehicles we can get in a day. I mean, there was a year where we had 120 cars and 60 bikes, you know, and we had 3 incidents, and we didn't get off the mountain until 11:30 at night. And once we cleared up the incidents, and that's why we actually, due to feedback, you know, there was a lot of spectators that were mad because they were stuck up there, you know, because we still had vehicles to run. I mean,
Right.
it went into almost to dark. And so that's why we've actually reduced the field. And it's actually become more competitive for people to be accepted, is because, you know, the quality of vehicles being entered now are so high. The whole vetting process is huge, but it was something we had to do because we only have one day. It's not like we get rained out and we come back on Monday like in the NHLA.
Don't have it, right?
We don't have that. So
And this is something I'd like to clear up for social media purposes, is people are like, why isn't it a 2-day event? We get that question every year.
So now listen.
Why isn't it a 2-day event? I'll tell you why it's not a 2-day event. The amount of resources that we pull for one day from the city is over the top. You talk about fire trucks, you talk about police officers, you talk about ambulances, you talk about the cost to rent the road from the city because it's a toll road. So the doing a 2-day event, we wouldn't have the resources. We'd have to outsource them from other places. We wouldn't have the support and the backing that we need to make this race safe. And financially, we ran all the numbers, and we would operate in a deficit trying to do everything twice. So that's exactly the
I
reason.
couldn't imagine.
That's the reason why. But it's just because truly the amount of resources, we're already doing everything we can for one day, and we wouldn't get the support for 2.
80% of my officials that come up there have taken vacation from their real jobs.
Yeah.
So,
That's why it's not a 2-day event, friends.
social media, that's why it's not a 2-day event. And among that, be generous, be kind, because like they said, most of these people are volunteers. It's actually costing them money to come here and help operate.
Right.
But that is part of the whole neat manner of this race, right? Is you get to see all these people come together for a common cause, to see a bunch of yahoos like me try to go up a hill as fast as you can, right? And so,
And they're as excited as any fan would ever be.
yeah, and so it's part of the experience. And so, you know, I want to talk about the